And here we go. We are now live, Facebook, YouTube. Comment in. Tell us where you're coming from. Our subject today is masculine power, feminine power. You put those two together. Do you get fire? What is the fire you can get in your life by harnessing both your masculine energies and your feminine energies? Like, what is that all about? What's going on today with the Me Too movement and the feminine power movement? Like, is that something that you're tapped into? How is that affecting our culture at large? And then what's going on today with, like, the dudes, the men, the masculine energy? Like, what is it in retreat, or is there another push there for a greater clarity around what true masculine energy is and how it can work in our culture and our society? And Shireen, jump in. Give us some feminine energy.
Will do, my friend. I just have to say, I just love this subject so much, and I feel like it's one that is so absolutely necessary right now. I just feel like we're in this weird time where there's clearly a feminine uprising, and there's clearly like even just with the president of the United States of America being like somewhat of a pussy grabber. Okay, is it too much to say that 2 seconds
No,
into the live stream?
no, it's
Like,
good.
I just feel like that happened, and then there was the women's march, and then there was the hashtag Me Too, and all of a sudden it's like this huge, and even everything in the entertainment industry with like Kevin Spacey and just I don't even know. There's a bajillion names. Like people are just like dudes are dropping like flies who have created their success on assaulting or belittling other people. And at the same time, like we have Oprah at the Golden Globes, their time is up, like calling it out. Like I just feel like there's so much happening right now in our culture that is, it's just all like coming to a head, and we all see it and we all feel it. We're like, holy shit, like we're part of it and we're watching it. And it's like, it's just the fucking craziest experience ever that I just feel like I need this conversation.
Good. Hey, Loris. Yeah, listening to what you said and sort of the way you described it, it almost sounds like there's a war going on between the masculine energies and the feminine energies. The masculine, I would say that there is a polarization happening where there are some people who relate very, very closely with being a man and with certain kinds of masculine energy that make them go, feminism is corrupt, and feminism is resulting in all of these distortions to our culture and our systems that are unhealthy and frankly dysfunctional. And then you have the feminine side saying, well, yeah, but the Me Too movement and a bunch of the sort of unearthing of like, well, obviously something behind male tendencies is causing all kinds of abuse, and that needs to be stomped, and that needs to be destroyed and taken care of. And so it does feel like there's this rising conflict that I don't know if has ever been there before in our culture between men and women, masculine, feminine. And that conflict is interesting because it's sensational, because like, okay, anytime there's a battle or a conflict like that's going to get your attention. But it's also, I think it reveals an opportunity where if you are on one of those sides where you're really just rooting for female power or feminine power, or really just rooting for masculine power, you're probably missing out on half of your power. I think the real power comes in when the masculine and the feminine energies learn to dance with each other. They don't fight each other, but they dance with each other. It's like you make love with each other. It's like then like that's the life creating force. And I think that is like the magic potion or the magic elixir is like when masculine and feminine energies spiral together, dancing and like lift each other up. And there is this tremendous power to that. And I think what I'm seeing and what I feel like I heard you describe, Shireen, is more of like beating each other down. So how do we change that in our own lives so that we can capitalize on the major vacancy in society of people who have both strong masculine and feminine both masculine and feminine energies at work for them. And we got a bunch of people saying hello. Hey, okay, we got Shireen saying hello. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Margaret, hi Sandra. Masculine and feminine were equals during antiquity. I'm hopeful for its return. That's interesting. What is antiquity? Do you know, Shireen? Because I'm curious, like, if that's a specific date range or period of history, or is it just mean like way back when?
I actually have no idea what that means. I feel terribly useless right now.
Okay, we'll Google it at some point. Or, Sandra, if you want to just Google in, like, when you mean antiquity had the masculine and feminine figured out. I think what's happening, though, here's what I'm seeing happening, is that there was a period in time where men were men and women were women. And what I mean by that is, like, men were expected to be very, very masculine, and women were supposed to be very, very feminine, and there was really not much in between. Now, this is complete projection because I have no idea. Like, historically, there could have been people of the whole spectrum just wandering around and nobody gave a fuck. So it's possible that all this is a construct of the 50s, and I was born in the 70s, so I would have no idea what really happened before the 80s anyway. Like, I was just not conscious before that. So if anyone knows, let us know. But what I'm guessing is, if there was let's just go with the 50s. In the 50s, men were supposed to be men, women were supposed to be women. There was no such thing as gender bending, or if there was, like, it was really frowned upon, really suppressed. And so that means that there was a dance that was pre-orchestrated. People knew their place, and it's like, if you're a man, suck it up, be a man. Men don't cry. Be strong. Be tough. That was your prescription for being a man, and that was all you were allowed to do. If you're a woman, be feminine, be receptive, take care of the home, take care of your man. Like,
don't talk back.
What's that?
Don't talk back.
Yeah, like all that stuff, right? So there's the whole power dynamic in there too, and in that situation, although not the most evolved way to handle masculine and feminine energies, it created a power dynamic that, like, basically propelled the United States into, like, the biggest technological industrial revolution ever. It's like there was a power to the 50s behind that kind of cooperation. You be all 100% feminine, I'll be 100% masculine. We will get married and stay married, and through that partnership of you being 100% feminine, me being 100% masculine, we bring together the feminine power, the masculine power, and together as a household, as an undivided partnership and team, boom, there's superpowers there. Nowadays, you have the opportunity to internalize both into you. Like, it's not about necessarily, are you the perfect masculine, hyper masculine man married to the perfect super feminized woman. Maybe you both have tremendous masculine power and feminine power at the same time. I think women are more in touch with this opportunity because women, after joining the workforce, have had to develop very masculine traits in order to compete with the men in the workforce.
That's a good point, actually. So I almost think, like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like you're right that was much more simple, that it was like with the man being, like, sort of like the powerful one who went out and did his thing, and then the woman kind of was the receptive one who just was compliant and sort of caretaking. It was very easy, and it was clear, and it sort of, like, laid the groundwork for there to be corruption. You know what I mean? It just was like, it's sort of like what you and I were talking about when we were talking about your next super sexy viral video you're gonna do. Hey, we talked about voice for the voiceless. Like, that's, I think what's happening right now with the hashtag Me Too and all this stuff that's coming up is that a lot of people who have been voiceless for a very long time are now having a voice, which is awesome. Like, we don't want to condone the energy of assault or repression. Like, that would be super fucked up. So certainly I think it's great that these voices are having space to be expressed and heard. I think that's the difference, is they might have been expressed in the past, but they were shoved back down, whereas now they're heard. And so I feel like maybe instead of it being like masculine versus feminine, it's actually more like what you were talking about, again, with that last video of, like, the energy of exploitation. Like, if the energy of exploitation's in your life anywhere, then it's everywhere. We need to really work as a society and a culture of getting rid of that. So it's maybe like, you could be masculine, you could be feminine, you could be both. It's actually not even about that. Maybe it's more about making sure that in whatever energy you're displaying and whoever you are, however powerful or caretaking, maybe you're the CEO of a freaking Fortune 500 company, maybe you're a badass entrepreneur, maybe you're a CEO of a house and a home. Who freaking knows how your shit rocks? Like, rock your shit and do your thing. And that we all make sure that wherever we are, that the energy of exploitation is sort of unwelcome and not allowed to have space, you know? But does this all make sense, Garrett?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to be, like, I totally agree with you. And I want to be careful not to go down the route of the exploitation piece of it just yet, because I feel like that'll suck us in. It's such a deep subject too. And,
Okay.
and with the masculine and feminine energy piece, like, or traits or whatever you want to call them, it's like, that is something that I think everybody is wrestling with today, even just in themselves. So if you are a woman who is tackling a very masculine or strident career, and if you're a woman who is going for a career that's highly, highly competitive in a masculine way, chances are you've had to become quite masculine yourself just to
Mm-hmm.
compete.
Yeah.
Masculinity is a competitive energy. Femininity is inherently a receptive, cooperative energy, and and so when you internal and if you're, if you're a single mom, or or in any situation where you don't have, as a woman, where you don't have a man around or someone around to play that masculine role, where you have to play the masculine role to protect your children, to provide for your children, or just yourself, or to take care of you in a career. Now all of a sudden you've got this tremendous um, side of you that's very masculine. Like, you've become quite masculine. The problem with that is then the feminine side of you can be dominated inside you, like we sort of historically say men have suppressed women historically. Well, the masculine energy in you as a woman could be suppressing your feminine energy inside you, and not
That's true.
allowing you
Yeah.
to become be feminine and vulnerable in the ways that might actually give you what you want. One of the women in the chat here said, "I wish I had a loving husband I could take care of," or I can't remember exactly the words.
She
It
said,
went
I would give anything to have a living home and husband to care for.
living home, or living loving husband, was it? I
I
think it was.
think she meant to say loving, but it was a
Yeah,
typo.
loving husband, loving home and husband to care for. Right, I would give anything for that. Well, the thing you might have to give to have that is your masculine energy. And the trouble with giving that is it makes you feel very vulnerable. So when you choose to not be masculine and to not employ masculine energy, it makes you vulnerable. And the feminine has always been quite vulnerable to exploitation, like you were just saying, Shireen, and
Yeah.
abuse, and being controlled, and being manipulated. Well, I don't know about I think the feminine energy is actually very good at manipulating, and that's how the feminine energy. Well, I think that's how
That's
you
how we
sort
get
of
what we
manage.
want.
Yeah, but you can't do it directly because you go directly against a strong masculine energy, and it's going to stomp on you. It's going to,
Yes,
you know.
exactly.
But I think what we're seeing here is women, and most women in our Western culture who have careers are very masculine, and it's so common that we don't even see it anymore. Like, I think if you were some person who, traveled through time, fast forward from the 50s, and you just like showed up here, and all of a sudden you're talking with your typical woman that you might meet on the streets of New York City, who works in, a corporate office, and is managing men, and teams of men, and teams of men and women, and maybe owns and runs her own company, or is just sort of a captain of industry. Like, those those types of women, I think, were very rare in the 50s, and now they're quite common. And I think that approach has tremendous power to it, and at the same time it's very different than anything we've ever been set up for,
Hmm.
intrapersonally. Like,
Yeah, like
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's really interesting because as you were describing this type, I kept thinking about my mother-in-law. Like she is a C-level executive at a Fortune 500 company. This chick is a boss. She's like a boss in every sense of the word. And she knits and she likes to garden and she has kitties. Like, you know, like she just sort of embodies the like total pendulum on both sides of masculine and feminine. And I'm always very amazed with her. I'm like, how does she do it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's really easy for me, like when I get in work mode, to like stop cooking because I'm just like, dude, I don't have time. Actually, Garrett, I'm gonna have to pause because my babysitter just got back because Luke started crying. So you just take it away, honey. I'll be right back to you in a hot second.
All right. So, you know, and this right there is a perfect example of how, you know, your feminine energy has to like go and rescue your child while we're, you know, working on something. And that is that, you know, and the example of your mother-in-law is like a perfect example of how actually I'm going to wait until you get back, Shireen, because it makes no sense to have a conversation with you about it and then not even have you hear it. Okay, so Michelle says, wait a minute, use it, don't use it. We have both these energies, step up and use them, never abuse them by defining his role mode. Beautiful soul should always shine. Yeah, I mean, I dig that. I agree with you, Michelle. I think what we're saying here is that that when you start to internalize, let me take it another way. Let's take the example of the 50s. In the 50s, when children were raised, they were automatically put in their masculine, feminine roles and kept there. You know, you get the Barbie house, you get the guns and bows and arrows. Like you know, you get the feminine role was dictated to you, the masculine role was dictated to you, and you learned how to play that role really, really well. Nowadays, we have parents who are going, well, I don't know, you know, my child is 5 and he likes to wear dresses, so I don't know whether he's identifies as a him or a her yet. And I think that,
true.
yeah, and it's like, but like that's crazy because like I've known a lot of 3 to 5 year old boys who are just like into Barbies and dresses, and as soon as the testosterone hits them when they're 13, they're out of that. Like they're not, you know, they're not. I mean, they'll still be chasing Barbies and dresses, but they'll be those Barbies and dresses will be on much more feminine bodies than the ones that they're growing into. So it's like I think there is a danger in being sort of overly unwilling to just say, okay, look, you're a boy, just be a boy. You could be a boy who loves dresses and Barbies, but we're not gonna put you through the experience at age 6 or 7 of like, you know, having to be transgender. It's like,
right.
let you, if you want to go transgender, do it when you're like fully in your physiological, you know, manhood, and then you still want to be a woman, fine, but like at least there you've, you know, now others might argue, well, you know, testosterone starts poisoning their personality because now all of a sudden they've got all these very masculine desires and traits when they always identified as being a girl. And I think that's the weird thing about it is like a soul, someone just said like, let your soul shine. Like, I don't think there's like
gender.
Male and female souls. No.
Yeah.
Like gender and masculine, feminine. Like male, female is just like, that's your body. Like that's a body thing. And then I guess there's an emotional body. And I couldn't speak to that. Oh, but to go like full, now that I know you're back, Shireen, like to speak to your mother-in-law. She's a great example of somebody who's mastered their masculine to the point that the masculine isn't dominating her feminine side. So she's able to put aside the masculine and still knit and enjoy cats and bunnies or whatever it is.
Right.
And, you know, because like that's because she's mastered it. And I think that's the opportunity for all of us is to realize we don't need to reject either energy. but we need to realize that those energies are powerful and they can suck us in, and one energy can suck us in so much that we do reject the other energy. So even if you're a woman, you think, I'm not going to reject my masculine side. No, you're going to go compete and go be strong and go all that. But as soon as you internalize that masculine energy, I think what happens is you don't realize that that masculine energy is a force to be reckoned with that can then go suppress your feminine energies. And I think the reverse is true for a lot of boys. A lot of boys these days are brought up by single mothers, and the single mothers appreciate the feminine traits in their boys. And even in the classrooms, the feminine traits of boys: sit down, be well behaved, be cooperative, be politically correct, like do as you're told, be quiet. All of that stuff those are really like feminine expressions that very masculine boys like are not good at, and so they get punished for being masculine, and they grow up thinking, okay, I always get all the positive reinforcement when I'm arty and feminine and sensitive and all the feminine qualities. And then you have like these hyper feminized boys who the unfortunate thing for them is they've been taught to reject their masculinity to the point that they're kind of useless to themselves and everyone else, unless they're gay and they can be kind of the girlfriend partner in a gay couple, or they find a hyper masculine woman who's happy to have a very feminine boyfriend, but like otherwise, these dudes are kind of cooked.
Well, and I think this is like such an interesting subject because, like you said in the beginning, a lot of women, in order to compete in the working world, had to sort of like enhance their masculine traits. So I think like oftentimes women don't know how to be feminine in a relationship. So they either, like you said, attract a feminine man, or they just like sort of repel any masculine energy that comes their way because they are masculine and it's just not working.
Yeah.
So like for me, go ahead. No, you
talk about attracting a feminine man, because I think that is a huge problem for women these days. You have women who have a command of their masculine energies. They may have their masculine energies may be suppressing their feminine energies, and because they know they need more femininity in their lives, end up with guys who are sort of really are a nice complement to their energy, much more feminine and sensitive, but also that like these guys are not turning them on because like when it comes down to the physicality, it's kind of like, no, wait, you're supposed to be the dude. Like, so talk about that.
I just think this is like a problem that's running rampant because there's all these chicks with dicks running around town. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I literally think like women these days actually don't really know how to be feminine. And I think it's caused a lot of problems in dating, relationships, and marriage.
Well, what about the guys who don't know how to be masculine? Well,
that's a great point. I never think about it from that angle, but you're right. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, you could probably speak better to where they would get that from. I guess you just did, because you said like in the classroom and like, these single moms who are sort of patting them on the back for these very feminine tendencies they have, and or the moms or teachers or whatever are almost hyper masculine, therefore emasculating them, like not empowering them to step up and have their own backbone, but really kind of like, sit down, dude, I'll do it for you. You obviously don't know what you're doing. And they sort of learn to take the back seat. Because I've done this before where I was like the masculine energy in a relationship, and we were great. And we actually were off and on for like 2.5 years. We just like couldn't like get away from each other. We were like just had this really good BFF companionship thing that we just kept coming back to each other. But I kept breaking up with him. It was always me who broke up, and it was always me who went away. And I would always at some point decide I wanted to go back, because I was like, oh yeah, like we're like, we got that friend companion thing that it's really hard for me to like let go of. It was hard for me to be vulnerable in general in my life. And this person made me feel comfortable being vulnerable. So I almost couldn't have that with other people because I had more history with him. So I just kept going back. Anyway, the point is, I think when a woman is masculine and a man is more feminine, like call me 1950s dude, but I actually just don't think it works. I just think like inevitably both parties will be to some degree unfulfilled most of the time. I think there's exceptions to this rule, certainly, but I really think most of the time I don't think it works.
I'd love to hear more about your relationship if you're open to it, because this is my projection on what you just said. My guess would be that the reason you're breaking up with him is he just didn't really turn you on as a man. Like that he was a great BFF,
Yeah.
but and like really, receptive and sensitive and available for your feelings and all the sort of
Yeah.
feminine stuff that maybe even you couldn't handle yourself because maybe you said
Right.
you were a bit more masculine. So he really had that going for him and for your relationship. But then when it came to banging boots, you're kind of like, actually, I prefer a Channing Tatum kind of dude who will rock my world and give me the full masculine beast mode treatment.
I just need a little Magic Mike in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so funny how in the last like 3 live streams, Channing Tatum just keeps creeping in.
Yeah. This is the Channing Tatum show. We just
It's funny because like I can't even say that it was necessarily a sexual issue. Like I actually think the like physicality of that aspect of the relationship was fine. It was good. Like it was fulfilling, if you will. I think it was like psychologically, I knew that I was his alpha and I didn't like that. Like, even though I have a big personality, I've always had like a big personality. I've always known I don't want to be the dude in a relationship. And in order for me to really like submit or surrender or accept someone as my equal like partner, I was just like, you gotta have bigger balls than me. And I just knew he didn't. And so I think that was like, it was like dead from the beginning. We had a great thing going and I'm sure we had some like past life, like, I don't know, we just kept coming back, whatever. But always it came down to like, but I'm the dude. And I don't like that. It's not, I just knew like long-term, that's just not what I want. I don't want to be the dude in a relationship.
And you experienced that on the physical level, the emotional level, the mental level, what spiritual level, like what levels did that feel the most present for you?
Definitely mental, and definitely like, I guess this is also mental, like ambitious. Like I felt more ambitious than him.
Oh no, I mean like the where you felt like, you had bigger balls than him, you were more alpha, and that was a turn off. Like, were you turned off emotionally? Were you turned off physically? Like, can you describe like where the turn off might have been coming from if you had to describe it in your being?
I think that I was emotionally actually consistently let down by him. He actually did display like little boy behavior. Oftentimes it would flake on things and was just, just kind of like didn't really show up for me. So emotionally, I was definitely just let down. I think mentally it showed up in terms of ambition and or me foreseeing that I would make the babies and make the money. And that I just felt like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot. And then physically, like kind of Gemini. I'm like all in my head. Like I can't even say really that like I'm not a person who will be like, the sex wasn't good enough. Like I'm not that person. Unfortunately, I'm sure this would be a juicier live stream if I was totally saying that. But that's not my
style. Let me ask you, maybe the sex was fine, but how often did you want it? Like, like, oh, I'm not in the mood, or like, I'm just never in the mood. Like, did you notice that happened in your relationship where you're just like, this guy is, so my bitch that I just, I'm just not in the mood. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I've been with Kenny for 7 years and this person was before that. I'd have to really think hard to conjure what the fuck her sex life was like.
Yeah.
Been like a bajillion years.
Well, I'm just guessing, and so I'm projecting here, but I'm projecting sort of based on other anecdotal stuff I've encountered, and also just sort of studies around this. But I think really like the reason that 50 Shades of Grey was such a huge bestseller, I think, is because here you have so many masculine-oriented professional women who are tired of being alpha, who are tired of dominating, who are tired of being in charge, and just like some guy, some billionaire who will just tie you up and tell you what to do and spank you a little. Like
this is why 50 Shades of Grey was like such a sensation, because there's something to this. And this is what's so funny. Like, it's just so funny because I feel like oftentimes in the world, like women are like equal rights, feminism. like, get away, you pussy grabber. Like, there's this side of life that's very like, we want to neutralize that power energy, and we want power, and like, we want to not be seen as objects, and we want to not be seen for our bodies. But then there's this total other side of life that's just like, dude, sex is power, and it just is what it is. Like, being desirable, being desirable, is that a word, desirable?
Yeah.
Is powerful. So like, you know, there's just that energy of like alpha and the primal. It's almost like the primal versus like this like progressive thing we're trying to do here. I think
Yeah.
about this all the time, how like being in our heads is like over here, but being in our bodies is like over here. And I'm like, how do we intersect all this shit? Like, how do I be like a mom and this entrepreneur, but a wife, but really be successful? And like, I don't know. I'm just like, there's so many things. So I hope I'm doing all right.
I'm going to throw out a new idea that I just had here, and maybe it's not a new idea, but, you know, the grab 'em by the pussy thing conjures it, and the desire to beat that down, right? So when he said that, and I first heard it, I laughed, and then I was like, oh, well, that's just locker room talk. And then within like 24 hours, I think that's how he explained it, like, oh, that's just locker room talk. But the other thing that's interesting about it is like, okay, you don't want to be caught saying that stuff in the national media, but the dude was, and I think he handled it pretty well. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, that's technically assault. Oh, it is. But here's the weird thing: it's like feminine energy often responds really well to hyper aggressive males, like, you know, a man who will just take you, who has the balls to just grab you by the pussy and take you, like, it's gonna turn you on. Now, whether or not that's politically correct or the right thing to do, or whether you've been violated in any way, I'm not speaking to that. I'm just speaking to, like, does it turn on your feminine self to be grabbed by the pussy and to be taken? Like, is that something that works if you wanted it, like if it was the right man? And so I think the interesting thing that's happening is like, people see this fat old Trump dude and be like, well, he shouldn't be getting away with that bullshit, especially to, you know, young vulnerable women. And the masculine side of the feminist movement, I think, is just like, we should slap that shit down. Like, that is completely inappropriate, shouldn't be allowed, you know, slap that shit down. But I think the thing that's slapping it down is actually masculine. I actually think it's like it's the masculine energy. It's like, if I'm a dude, right, and some other dude comes and grabs one of my women by the pussy, you know, like someone who's in my I don't know how to say it, like, let's say I have a harem or whatever, you know, women that, like, I consider sort of in my tribe, right? I see some dude come out of nowhere and do that. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna fucking slap him down. Like, you do not get to do that. Those are my women, you know, like, you don't get to do that. And I feel like that's the kind of energy that's like, whoa, you know, Trump, you cannot be going around doing that. But the weird thing about it is, the thing that is being slapped down might be coming from the same energy, not exploitive. And I think that's the other trouble, is like, where does masculine energy actually become exploitive? Like, how do we draw the line between assertive and predatorily aggressive?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I really think this is like the nuance of it all, because, I mean, are you kidding? It's like so beautiful to me that our society is looking at this, because it's a fucking issue. Like, it's terrible to be a woman and walk around and know that at any moment you could become prey. It's fucking horrible. And I love that people are getting, I don't know, getting, like, I guess, punished. I don't like saying that, but that's what I feel. I'm like, I guess, or at least called out, or at least addressed. Like, they're not getting away with it. I like that people are not getting away with it. That is wonderful to me. And there is also, like, I guess this, like, the nuance is, like you said, like, you don't want to lose the masculine. You don't want to lose, like, a man being totally, like, hot and alpha and awesome. But I guess really this nuance is like ethics and morals, you know, that, like, that there would be hot alpha sexy dudes and or women, you know, just hot alpha sexy masculine energy that would be coupled with ethics and morals and leadership and consideration. and also being in tune, because I think that there's also this like weird gray area where I think sometimes because I studied nonverbal communication in college, like I was a communications person, and like women just read nonverbal cues and they often communicate passively because they're taught to be that way. It's part of the feminine whatever, you know. Men don't read nonverbal cues, not nearly as well as women do. And so I do think there's like there's a gray zone where like a woman might be giving nonverbal cues that are a no, and a man doesn't even read it and just still goes because they're in their alpha. So I think there are some cases in which a dude just totally fucked up and wrong, and it's terrible and it's obvious, you know? And I do think there's like some cases where it's like slightly gray, where you're like if he was more in tune, if he was more connected, he would have slowed down to see that she didn't want that. And if she was a little more loud or a little more assertive, then she would have maybe made it more clear that she didn't want that. But sometimes I think this thing happens where it's like a misunderstanding. Like, I don't know if you saw that the thing that happened with the guy who owns all the companies, Russell.
My
I know.
Russell
sorry.
Simmons.
It was Russell Simmons, I think. Yeah, it was Russell Simmons.
He's like into TM and all that stuff.
Yeah, let me just Google it.
He was like he owned a record company or something too, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's him. So basically, when the hashtag Me Too movement came out, apparently he said something to the effect of, like, I would never do that to anyone, or I would never want my daughter being treated like that. He said something sort of publicly that was addressing it. And then a woman from his past came up and like wrote an article about how she was out at a club with him, and it like they had known each other for years. They had mutual friends. Did you hear this story? Am I like
No, I haven't heard this. I think I heard the little news clip that he got swatted down too, but I didn't hear how.
Yeah, so like basically she told her story, and her story was that they'd known each other for years, and I think at certain times he had made it obvious that he had interest in her. Like I think he sent her a bunch of like balloons and flowers on her birthday, something that kind of like showed that he was maybe interested. And I don't think she ever really like fully took him up on any of his advances, so they were just kind of like friends in circles, and they'd see each other like literally over like decades, like just they had a sort of a good rapport going. And then one night he was going to give her a ride home, and it was his driver and him and her in the back seat. And she said, "Oh, you want to turn here to go to like my place?" And then Russell was like, "No," told the driver to like keep going. And then she was kind of like, "Oh," like I think she took that as like, "Oh no, like he's trying to dominate me." And he might have been. But basically what ended up happening is, instead of her asserting herself and saying like, "No, bro, let me out the car," like instead of her like coming up harder, she decided that she basically felt in danger. She felt like he was going to like dominate her, like that he wasn't listening to her for not turning that way and telling the driver to go that way anyway. And they also didn't go in the front of his building. They went through some weird back way. So she like perceived this as like, dude, I'm going to get raped right now. Like I will probably be raped in this situation. So instead of ever explicitly saying no, or like telling the driver no, or instead of ever explicitly anything, she just decided to have sex with him to avoid rape. And so like, I don't know what was happening on his side. I don't know, but he addressed this, and he stepped down from his companies, and he said, "That wasn't the way I saw it. Like, I'm deeply sorry, and that wasn't the way I saw it." And so like, I just think this story sort of highlights what you just said, which is, where does the masculine become exploitive? Because you want that hot alpha energy, that clearly like you can't get away from that, and we don't want that to go away. It's beautiful. And you don't want a woman to feel like she has to have sex with someone to avoid being raped either. So you're just kind of like I don't know how that dance goes, but
well, so one of the problems with the dance is, and I think this is what really it seems to be the gasoline on the Me Too fire, is men and women working together, like women in the workforce, men and women in close proximity to each other, working together in a professional environment where men have power, authority over these women's not only jobs, lives, and careers. So like Russell Simmons, obviously this gal was probably working for him, and so she might not have admitted it or said it in the article, but I'd be willing to bet like 80-90% of her unwillingness to say, hey to the driver, look, at I don't feel comfortable with this, please drop me off, is that's my boss and I do this and my career is over, you know, or at least this great job I have is gone and it's going to take me a long time to pick up the pieces. And so hopefully I can finesse this situation and get out as, you know, with as little as unscathed as possible, even if that means having sex with someone you didn't want to have sex with. So it's like, so, you know, I think that's the fundamental problem. The reason the 50s worked so well is like guys, and we don't know that it worked well. I mean, I think there was a lot of shit that happened behind closed doors and a lot of abuse that, you know, never got aired out. And so we can't, like, you know, we don't want to over idealize the situation. But the fact is, you know, if you have a football team or a you know, a business where it's just like all guys, there's a male hierarchy that is quickly established. The alpha males run to the top of the hierarchy. The most alpha dudes are the ones in charge. The smartest, most alpha dudes are the ones like calling the shots. And they beat each other down and they haze each other, and like there's a way of managing other dudes and their place in the hierarchy relative to yours based on how alpha you are and how smart you are and how you sort of play that very masculine game. Now you throw in women into the equation and that game is still going and there's still these hierarchies and there's still these career desires, but all of a sudden you can have a guy who would just like kind of give another guy a beat down is now sexually attracted to his subordinate.
Right.
And it's
That's
like
confusing.
it's super fucking confusing. And then you have women in a very compromising situation where they're working towards a career and this guy is misinterpreting their politeness for attraction, you know. So there is that. So that's a huge mind fuck, and I think it's a huge minefield too, because you know, like until like there's I mean, it would basically the rule would just have to be you can never date anyone that you work with. Yeah. You know, that would have to be you know, that would be the only, and even there you're still going to have attractions that are running people's behavior that shouldn't be running their behavior. So so that's one side of it, but then the other side of it is you know, if we get into this environment where the only way not to be guilty of assaulting a woman or someone, I mean, it doesn't have to be a woman, but the only way to not be guilty of assaulting is to like constantly get explicit permission. I've seen these things where it's like, is it okay if I touch you here? Is it okay if I kiss you? Is it okay if I hold you here? Is it okay if I grab you by the pussy? Like, you know, it's like, okay, you know, you're getting all this permission explicitly, but that again is like very heady. That's not like the
it's like not
dance
hot.
of masculine.
There's,
Exactly.
That's
it's
not
like
hot. Like,
no.
Don't fucking ask me, bro. Like, that's weird. Like, don't ask me for permission. Right. That now I feel like I'm your alpha, and like it's not hot.
So like the way I like to go about things is I like to ravage my woman. You know, I will like grab her, I will throw her around the bedroom, I will manhandle her, and we will have a great time. And like she will be screaming sometimes, and sometimes it'll sound like she's screaming for her life, but and when she does, I might pull back just a minute, just be like, you know, and then we're just laughing, like it's a good time, you know. But there is an element of female sexuality that I've experienced a great deal of, where it's just like, rape me, like manhandle me, take me, like that is like the ultra feminine thing a lot of the time. And it's like, okay, can you lovingly play that role of the beast? And I love to be the beast. I just come into that bedroom and I'm a beast. And sometimes I don't come in the bedroom. I'm grabbing you out of the backyard or something, dragging you through the house, throwing you on the bed, ripping your clothes off.
Like caveman.
I am. I'm a fucking caveman. And it's great, but it's like, if I had to ask permission every step of the way, it would just totally ruin it.
It would, like, exactly, the hotness is like out the window. Now you're like, is this okay? Is this okay, sweetie? It's just so not hot.
What do you want me to do? How do you want me to make love to you, honey? You know, like, is this good? Is this good? Is this doing it for you? Are you coming yet? You know, it's like, oh my God. It's like, it's
I just feel like,
you know, No, it's
All the
just like I want to like grab you and just like throw you around and bang, it's like
Okay,
grab
Garrett,
you by the throat.
Garrett.
It's like that's the
All the women on this live stream are trying to do you now. Like everyone is probably like, yes, Garrett, we're all gonna come to wherever you live, and
line up. I'll take care of all of you. Just
oh god.
I'll give you the treatment you've been missing. There's not enough men in the world. That's the problem. It's like there's not enough men who are really able to like connect with their inner beast. Like and you know, Beauty and the Beast is like that's an what do you I don't know what it is. Like that's a salient story for a reason, because like men like you know, if you're a beast, like that actually works. Like that's a good masculine quality. Especially this beast that like genuinely loves the beauty. He may be a fucking beast and he may be scary as fuck at times and he may manhandle her and throw her around and, you know, imprison her in his castle and force her to, you know, act a certain way. And she is like, you know, in many ways, like, I don't know. It's like she's captive to this beast. Yeah. And yet at the same time, there is love there. The masculine and feminine are actually working in that situation somehow.
Totally. Sophia, I have to read this comment before I go away. She said the feminine uprising affects us all, male and female. We're figuring out new ways of relating sexually right now, and it needs to still be hot and fun. Yes, girl. That's exactly what we're saying right now. Like, exactly. And then Emmett says sexual relationships are becoming like a legal contract and the passion is being lost. I totally... it's difficult, guys. What do we do? I mean, I don't know. It's such a weird time. Not necessarily bad, because I think there's so much goodness to it, and yet it is complicated, I feel like.
Yeah, super complicated. And I think it's, you know, doubly complicated just because there's a legality to it all, you know. And that's and there's like all these sort of social constructs that are coming up, and that's where you know, you need to find partners where you can gain the kind of permission with each other that can make it hot again, you know. It's like that's you know, and I think, like you were saying, Shireen, I think it's time where when men and women's roles were very strictly enforced, you could be just hyper feminine or hyper masculine and kind of an idiot and it would still work out, cause like Ralph is saying Garrett sounds rapey, right? And it's like, yes, I'm literally talking about like raping a woman I love, you know, but not in a bad way. Like she's enjoying it. So is it really rape? No. But like that's the whole thing, is like this is the thing, Ralph. It's like if you cannot take a woman and just like, this is a woman who loves you, a woman who's attracted to you, a woman who wants it. If you cannot take her and sort of bend her to your will and actually like I don't know how to say it. It's like there's a it's not real. I don't know. Take it away, Shireen.
Let it rip. No, let it out, Garrett. Don't let this rapey comment hold you back, because I feel like there is just truth to what you're saying. Like there is sort of a submission or a surrender that a woman does in sex, and that isn't rapey. I mean, that's her choice. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Garrett's wife is like super upset about this. I'm sure she's probably like, yeah, shit is banging. So like, it sounds rapey, but I feel like if it's a consensual relationship and you guys know what's up, it's all good. It's only rapey if the woman is like, stop, bro, and they're not, you know? So I hear you, Ralph, but I don't really hear you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you know, and it brings in like complicating factors. So like, you know, my wife will scream and say no and stop and things like that in like, but we're laughing, you know, like as soon as I stop, it's just all hysterical laughter and giggles and things like that. It's like,
so it's almost like role playing.
Yeah, it's, you know, yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it. It's like, it's role playing. It's like she's playing the hyper feminine, you know, and the hyper feminine wants to be manhandled and taken and, you know, forced into compromising situations, and yet, you know, so when I'm doing it, it's like we're having fun together, you know. but at the same time,
Ralph says, "I'm kidding, man." So cute. Also, I wanted to bring this up. Emmett, The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida.
Yeah.
Read this book, Garrett?
No.
I've totally read this book.
Oh, you
it's
have?
A great book. Yeah, it's about what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
And he wrote The Way of the Superior Man is for men. Basically, like, here's how you be a superior man. Like, here's what women want. And it's all about this alpha shit we're talking about. It's super solid and amazing. Every dude should read it. It's amazing. And he wrote a chick version called Dear Lover. And I think he wrote it with his woman. But that one, I tried to read that one and I couldn't get into it because it was like basically saying how I, as a woman, just needed to be like, like that. Like almost if I used too much humor, that it would be too masculine and chummy and I would neutralize the sexual energy. Like I needed to be more like breathless and taken by my man. And it just like, I couldn't keep reading it. It was like annoying me. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting because I really liked the man version. I thought that his advice to like how dudes should be with women was solid. But I was not feeling the female version.
Well, it's interesting you say that because my woman is super, super feminine. I think if there's like a 1 to 10 on the feminine Richter scale, she's a 10. Like she's super feminine. Maybe a 9, you know, on certain days. But like she's super feminine and she does have a delightful way of joking around. We joke all the time and have fun. But at the same time, her style of humor is a very feminine, cutesy style of humor. That's still hilarious, but it's like hilarious in a cutesy way. Whereas I've known women who are very, still very beautiful, smart women, very attractive women, but much more masculine, where their humor was like on par with like my best bros. Like, you know, like she was funnier than some of my best bros, and she had like bro humor that like she was wicked good at that bro humor. And I was like, you know, that's totally coming from a masculine place. Like that is a masculine kind of humor, which is hilarious and great. It was awesome banter. At the same time, it was definitely a very masculine quality. And I can see how a man who is already struggling to be alpha with you, it's like you were saying, like you were in a relationship with a guy and your balls were bigger than his. So it's like you've got big brass comedy balls. You've got big brass humor balls, right? And it's hilarious. But I can totally see, and for me, like being like hyper alpha anyway, like I love it. You know, it's great. But I think for a guy who's maybe a little bit more feminine, that again would probably, like this book you're describing was suggesting, that could probably further emasculate a guy who was, you know, struggling to find a way to out alpha you, because humor can be a very alpha pursuit. You know,
that's a good point. And when I gotta tell you, like when I go to do that like podcast / radio show thing after we live stream, I always go over there and do it, and it's with 2 guys. I seriously feel like I'm a dude. Like when I'm talking to them, I'm like, oh my god, like why do I sound like a dude right now? Like I'm with 2 men. Like why do I sound like I'm the most bro-y out of us all? But like happens every time, and I'm like, I just think I just got mega masculine energy. Like I just don't think there's any way around it, you know?
Yeah, you've got the humor tool. You're hilarious with it. Your voice is delightfully feminine, so you've got that going for you. Your appearance is delightfully feminine, and then you're kind of coming out with like just bro humor, which is fantastic.
And my soul is a frat boy.
Okay, there you go. Well, if you weren't so darn pretty, I think you probably that would probably push you into a corner where you might have a lot of trouble cultivating relationships with men that you're attracted to, because you know, but you've got the looks, the prettiness, the feminine appearance and voice that like kind of lets you get away with that. I think that, like, you know, you get the best of both worlds that way.
Well, and thank God for that, because otherwise I'd be in big trouble. I'd just be like a confused woman and a man. I mean, and a man in a woman's body. Yeah, something like that. So I actually have to get going. Parking pass. Yes, I'm sorry, Garrett. I have to get going.
I understand. I'll wrap up the thing. The one last. You can like just dip
Yeah,
out,
I'll mute. I'm
Shireen.
gonna mute.
You wanna? Okay. Um, the one last thing I wanna say here is I think that they're like Shireen was saying, women have a nonverbal way of communicating, and this whole conversation started with maximizing both your masculine and feminine energy, like being really in command of both. I think the new opportunity for men is to have a well-developed feminine energy that can recognize when non-verbally you're being communicated with and what's being communicated non-verbally. I'm not saying that that's purely a feminine quality, but I think it does require feminine receptivity to take on those cues. And then the other piece of it is own your masculinity. Like, have fun with it. Like, being a man is a great thing, and if you celebrate it, like, you're gonna have a lot more fun, and the women you're with are gonna have a lot more fun too. Flip side of that is I think women are struggling to find men that can out alpha them, which is a weird irony that we're living with today. And then the question is like, well, how do you either find a guy who can out alpha you, or how do you, like Shireen's mother-in-law, find a way to turn off your masculine drive during periods of time when you're looking to court, and see if, and what I mean by court is like when you're looking to date or whatever, it's like turn off those masculine traits for a little bit. If Shireen wasn't so gosh darn pretty, she might just have to like tone it down with her sense of humor in order to allow guys to feel like they're pursuing her. And so let me read these last few comments here. It is intimidating to many men to have a balance of masculine and feminine sense of humor. My boss actually took me aside to explain this to me once. Yes, I have a degree in a prominently male profession, precision machining. Wow. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. First really got me thinking about masculine, feminine energy years ago. You want to hear something weird? I've heard this. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard this a while ago, that there is an epidemic of impotence in colleges. And that part of that, there's a theory that the driving force behind this male erectile dysfunction in colleges and universities, these are young dudes, they should not have any issue there, is that women being more masculine and sort of chasing guys and being just as sex crazed as the guys, like, were eroding the chase that men or the masculine energy typically has. And so these boys weren't really able to chase these girls because the girls are kind of like ready and willing and able, too quickly. And so because there wasn't this chase, and because the men or the boys weren't able to sort of exercise their masculinity enough in pursuing these college girls, because the college girls were basically just way too available to them, that was sort of doing something on the sort of deep internals of these guys and causing them to have erectile dysfunction, because there was nothing, they just weren't, they were playing too submissive of a role or too passive of a role, and that just wasn't, getting it going for them. So I don't know, I guess I could leave you with that. This has been a weird I've heard that it is from a generation who grew up on online porn and don't know what to do with a real girl. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's very true. I think, and then the hunt is better than the catch sometimes. I think the thrill of the chase is a very real thing. And if you are a woman who is having trouble either with guys who are, having erectile dysfunction or having trouble attracting the right guy, I think part of that is like, see how much you can amp up your femininity, sort of allow your masculinity to take a back seat, or just let your masculinity say, you cannot suppress my femininity as much, and then B, like, let them chase you, help them chase you. And I think there's two pieces of that. It's like, one is getting them to start chasing you, and then keeping them chasing you and allowing them to chase you. those are all great feminine qualities that get it going for the guy, and then the guy physiologically responds to that with a raging boner, and he's super excited to be with you, and he won't have the ED, and this might be like sort of part of the solution. Porn is like, do you see like guys chasing girls in porn? It's no, like girls like throwing themselves at porn star guys, and it's just like, and it's the most, I think, you know, half of porn is just, well, I mean, half, Jesus, probably like 99% of porn is just so fucking disgusting, because it's like, where's the magic and the chemistry and the sense, you know, there's a whole element that just seems to have been lost on this generation, where everyone's, I don't know. I don't need to get into, we've done enough damage on this show. I don't need to get into my misgivings with the porn industry or the artistry behind porn. But I think, you know, definitely we've got a lot of standards in pornography that are, I don't know who the fuck's enjoying that. You know, I was like, who's enjoying that? Like, that just doesn't even look like fun to anybody. So if that's the case, I could see like a bunch of young men, you know, turning to that as their sexual education and thinking, oh, that's how you're supposed to be, and this is how women are supposed to be, and oh God, what a fucking shit show. So who knows? Whatever happened to flow and ebb people? Yeah. You know, I think I kind of like being the wrong guy personally. Yeah. So I'm just reading comments here as they're coming up. I agree with you that ebb and flow is something I think we have to master. The ebb and flow of the feminine, ebb and flow of the masculine. I don't know. Make it work for you. Don't deny either of the qualities. Recognize that if you're dominant in masculine energies, especially if you're a female, you might want to just sort of tell your inner masculine energies, hey, you know, let that feminine energy up a little bit, you know, let it out a little bit more. And that will allow you to have probably the experiences that you're craving as a woman. Vice versa for guys, you know, if you were raised by a single mom or raised by women, or, you know, raised by a school system that seems to reward girls way more than boys, there's a good chance that you have not fully embraced your masculine energies, and because you haven't really gotten there with that, we haven't found the inner permission to do that, you might have dominant feminine energies that are fucking up your relationships with women, and you might find that you're getting friend zoned or treated like a BFF, as Shireen was saying. And if like you're finding that, you know, these girls that you're very attracted to are not treating you like a man but treating you like a BFF, and you don't like that, it could be that you're just not being a man, you know. And why? Because you've been trained your whole life to be feminine, and that's what the school system likes, and that's what, you know, most caregivers and people raising kids, it's much easier to raise young girls than young boys. Girls become difficult as they get older, but you know, anyone below 12, it's like, you know, you'd rather raise the girl because she's just gonna, you know, in general, the feminine, you want to feminize. You know, it's much easier to raise feminized children because the feminized children will behave and be quiet and all that stuff. And boys love to be rambunctious and blow shit up. And so, you know, maybe it's time, if you feel like you are lacking a little bit in that those masculine traits, start blowing shit up. Hit the gym, hit the weights hard, get into fighting, get into anything with intense competition, get your testosterone raging. Like, testosterone's a good thing. So anyway, I think that's all I got for now. Several years, I'm going to read the last few comments. Several years of dietary changes and detoxification really helped restore my testosterone. Yeah, which played a huge role in my behavior and social interactions. See, Cameron, I'd love to know what dietary changes and detoxifications helped the most. You know, that's really interesting to me. Even like I've always been pretty high testosterone guy, but as I get older, I can tell, especially in the last year or so, it's like, it feels like, you know, I've gone from 100% to like 80-90%. And even that little drop, it's like, oh, I'm getting tired, or like, you know, my gym workouts aren't quite as ferocious as they used to be. And I'd love, they are sometimes, but it's like, what are the things that I might be doing that are, inhibiting my testosterone or not giving me every edge? I'd love to hear it. So Cameron, if you got anything, please comment it in, because I actually would read those comments just for myself. Margaret, good show topic. Thanks. Hope you all enjoyed it. It's time to go. If you've got questions or show topics you would like us to talk about next time, go ahead and throw it in the comment or email it to Garrett@wayseers.com. That's GARRET at WAYSEERS.com. Tell us what you'd like to hear about. This one was just off the cuff. We might be talking ragtime. 90% of this might be nonsense, but it's just kind of like what Shirini and I thought was true in the moment. So I hereby refuse credit for anything I've said today. Sugar, stay away from. Okay, yeah. Get rid of sugar. Drink a high pH water. Interesting. Diet soda's the worst. Okay, so I drink a ton of Rockstar with sucralose in it. So I mean, this has got some of it in it. It's like this. It's Diet Rockstar. It's Rockstar Zero. I know it has sucralose in it, which is basically like Diet Cola. Am I screwing myself up by drinking that stuff? Do I have to change to coffee? I love the taste of the Rockstar. Anyway, yeah. So looking forward to any other tips from Cameron or Michelle in terms of the testosterone stuff, because I think that could be another piece of it. I think you guys are right on. Like, another piece is not just that we're raising our boys to be feminine, but we also are probably polluted their environments to the point that their testosterone, I know this for sure, I've heard this recently, that the average testosterone level for men used to be around 1,000 something, and now it's more like around 500 something. So it's like men are walking around with 50% less testosterone than they had 30 years ago. Well, that sucks, so maybe that's also part of the problem. Anyway, good. Okay, Cameron, contact me and we can talk. Drop your email address or give me some way to contact you, Cameron, and I will do that. And no way, stay away. I'm assuming, Michelle, you're talking about those Rockstar drinks that I drink like 3 or 4 of a day. All right, I'll try to. I think there's a lot more on this topic. Okay, well, we'll keep rocking the topic. And till next week, looking forward to it. Take care, everybody. God bless you. Bye.